Hey y'all, Taylor here, and yes, you're looking at Suri. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to teach your dog to come to you when you call them Sashi, or how to come when called or recall, whatever you want to call it, same skill. So this skill is super important. It's probably the most important skill that we will ever teach, simply because number one, it's life-saving, and number two, we need our dogs to come to us whenever we call them. I'm going to show you how to build a good reinforcement history and what that means, and also how to maintain your recall skill over the years, because recall is something that I have been building over several years in this area, and I want to show you how I got there by starting from the very beginning. So stay tuned. Disclaimer: just because your dog's recall cue will become insanely good after this program, it does not mean that your dog will be ready to really be off a leash. Off-leash training involves way more than just teaching your dog to come to you when you call them. And I really want to make that clear. All right, y'all, first, recall is a skill that has to be taught. It is not something dogs instinctively know how to do. You may find that for some dogs it's easier to teach it, meanwhile for others it's harder, especially depending on the environment. So right now my dogs are outside, and recall is harder for them outside simply because there are more smells, there are more distractions, so they're more interested in the environment, which is normal. However, Sashi, come. Yes, as you can see, it is possible. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I got this awesome recall in an insane environment like this. So stay tuned. So recall simply means that you have conditioned a verbal cue or maybe a visual cue if your dog is deaf, and they come to you when you use it. For us, the word is come. And also, your dog's name is also a verbal cue. Whenever we say our dog's name, we typically mean that we want them to come to us. So typically, the recall cue ends up being two words: your dog's name and the word come, or whatever word you want to use. For my dogs, it is come for Sashi and then here for Suri. Suri, Sashi, come here. Yay, good job. All right, cool. So we discussed we're going to have a verbal cue or visual cue if your dog is deaf, but we're also going to make sure that we heavily pay our dogs for coming to us whenever we call them. That is the most important aspect of teaching your dog a solid recall cue. You cannot over-treat your dog for this, y'all. A lot of times people worry about giving the dogs too many treats, like, oh, did I reinforce it enough? Of course, you want to make sure you cut back on how big your treats are if you're worried about diet and weight, but you don't have to worry about giving your dog too much reinforcement for this behavior. This behavior requires a lot of reinforcement, and I'm going to also show you how to give that reinforcement. All right, let's keep this going while Suri is laying down. You may have noticed that whenever I called my dogs, I did not sound too stern. I sounded pretty happy, pretty neutral. I did not sound angry when I called them. I really wanted to make sure I sounded pretty neutral. Why? If you have a habit of always yelling and then getting your dog to come to you, or trying to get them to come to you when you yell or when you sound stern, you may find that your dog may become reluctant to come to you, especially if yelling makes them feel any type of way. And I hope I'm making sense. You want to do everything you can to invite your dog into your space. You want them to come to you. You want them to be in your presence. If you seem angry, and even if you are angry, if you seem angry and you are yelling, it lowers the probability of your dog coming to you. Again, we want to give your dog the best chance possible to want to come to you. So when you're practicing your recall cue, you're going to try your best to sound as neutral as possible in your tone of voice. You do not have to use our tone of voice, but I want you to be your best self. And I want you to really try your best to want to invite your dog into your space. It's going to make way more sense when I put the camera on me, because it's not just what I'm saying, it's also my body language too. I'm doing everything I can to make myself seem inviting, seem like the place where my dog really wants to be at. You are going to start this off in an area that is low distracting. So you're not going to be in the park like I am. No, you're going to be in the living room, and you're going to be in a very low distracting area. You're also going to start this off at a very short distance. Sashi, come. Yes, good job. Very short distance, because you really want to make sure that your dog doesn't get distracted by something else whenever you do call them. Make no mistakes, there are distractions everywhere, even in your house. So it's really important that you really practice and build up to longer distances, or yes, longer distances, just like with touch. So I've gotten the how-to out the way, but let me talk about some things that may actually ruin your recall. And I'm going to actually use myself as an example. So in the past, when Suri was a younger dog, I found that I only called her indoors. So again, the only time I called her name inside for a reason was when I had to either give her a bath or it was time to give her medicine. I know that seems, that seems weird, but when you think about it, the only times I actually really needed to call her were during these times. If I was feeding her, she was already at my feet, and she typically knew where I was in the house, so I didn't have to call her that often. What ended up happening is that this dog actually stopped coming to me indoors whenever I called her name, especially in a prompted way, like she knew I needed her to do something, because she knew that I was only calling her for a bath or for medicine. So what happened is I poisoned the recall cue. A poison cue is whenever your dog actually associates a negative or unpleasant circumstance with that cue. So what happened with Suri was she actually started to associate bath with her name whenever I call her inside. So she started to associate the recall cue with the unpleasant circumstance, which led to her not wanting to listen to that cue. She wasn't being stubborn, it's just that she had made a negative association, and we want to avoid that with y'all. So don't let it be that the only times you call them is when they have to do something they don't want to do. For example, if you only call them when they're sniffing something really fun, or if you only call them when it's time to leave the dog park or things like that, don't do that. We want you to call them more often, which leads to more pleasant things, and that's the whole point. So with these two, I do still call them for things that may be unpleasant, but most of the time I call them, it is for happy things. It is for things that they're going to get a treat for. Or even if the thing is unpleasant, they're still going to get treats for. They get more treats for when it is unpleasant. So I hope all that makes sense. Let me continue. Also really important, since we are going to be relying on a verbal cue, meaning the dog's name and the word come or whatever word you use, it's really important that we do not repeat ourselves. Repeating the cue, repeating a verbal cue over and over again may actually lead to learned irrelevance. Your dog has a higher chance of starting to ignore you, especially if you say the word over and over and over again and they're not listening. This is why I'm telling y'all we will start off at a short distance with not that much distractions, because that way your dog has a higher chance of listening to you, and then over time we will bring back in the distractions. But you really want to make sure you really practice only saying the dog's name and the cue one time and then waiting for him to come to you. So something that can actually help you not repeat your dog's name and your verbal cue for recall is something called prompts or prompts. Prompts are basically extra noises or sounds you can make outside of saying your verbal cue and their name in order to convince them to come to you. I do this naturally all the time, especially in highly distracting environments. You may find that you may not have to use prompts inside, but you may have to. You'd be surprised with what your dog can become distracted by. So let me show you what a prompt looks like. Suri, here. Choo, 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 choo. Oh, he's a good girl. Wow. Woo. Good job. Did you hear all that? Did you see all that? I was making kissing noises, patting my legs. I was backing up, all the extra noises, just to convince her to continue to come to me. So after I said the verbal cue and then her name, I ended up following up with prompts or making myself even more inviting by using extra added sounds without repeating their name and the verbal cue. Hope I'm making sense. Summary. Recall is performed like this at first. Short distance, inside, low distracting area. You calling your dog's name and your chosen verbal cue. Them coming to you. You can mark with a yes. You give them multiple treats. Lots and lots of treats. And then that's it. Very, very simple. Oh, good girl. Good job. All right, y'all, let's get into this how-to. All right, y'all, let's get right into it. So I have Suri today, and I have a lot of treats in my pocket. I'm going to show you those treats. So I have a lot of treats because this is a behavior you want to heavily reinforce. I'm actually going to show you how I do jackpot treating, but give me a second. I'm going to get right into that. So the first thing I'm going to do is get her distracted by something else. I'm a solo trainer, so I have to get her somewhere else. I put her on that spot. I say her name and my recall cue, and when she comes to me, I give her 1 treat, 2 treat, and then a 3rd treat. I'm going to do that again. 1 treat, 2 treat, and a 3rd treat. So the first 2 reps, I put my hand down as if I was doing touch. You can use your touch hand signal as a hand signal for this behavior. This is especially good for our deaf dogs. But you can also just do it by just using the verbal cue, calling your dog's name, and then your chosen recall cue, and then you giving them that reinforcement. So let me briefly talk about jackpot treating. So this is something that we haven't covered yet. Jackpot treating is when you give your dog more than 1 treat consecutively after they complete a behavior. This form of reinforcement is extremely powerful because you basically give your dog multiple treats for that one behavior instead of just 1 treat. 1 treat, 2 treats, and 3 treats. I'm not giving her a whole hand of treats. I'm literally breaking it up into 3 treats because for dogs it is quantity over quality. So remember that. Quantity over quality for a dog. So just break up those treats and give it to them 3 times consecutively, and that'll make you have a jackpot treat. So right here you may have saw me put the treats on the floor. I'm doing this because she's becoming a little sharky, or that just means that I can feel her teeth because she's very excited, which is normal. So you can also do the same or just do open palm.
Good job. Sir here? Yes. Good job. Good job.
So yes, y'all, it's pretty straightforward. You call their name, you use your recall cue. When they close that gap, you're going to give them that jackpot treat.
Sir here? Yes. Good job.
Now I'm starting to increase the distance ever so slightly, meaning that I've gone from very short distance to a slightly longer distance now.
Sir here?
And remember, if you're working solo, you can put treats somewhere, like on the furniture or on the floor, 5-10 feet away from you, and then walk briskly in the opposite direction, and then call them when they're done eating that treat. That gives you the chance to get them further away from you. However, if you have more than one person to work with, you both can practice calling the dog one at a time. It's actually much easier than what we're doing solo. But we gotta work with what we got.
Good job. Good job.
Really important. I'm using pretty basic medium value treats right now, but recall is a cue that can become really hard. So it's really important that depending on your environment, you have a variety of treats. So right now my treats are pretty medium value, but if I was outdoors, like in the backyard, I would be using higher value, like cheese, simply because being outside is way more distracting than being inside.
Good job.
You also want to keep that in mind for longer distances. The longer the distance, the more chance for your dog to become distracted by something else. So it's really important that you have at least medium value treats to start off with.
Good job. Good job. Nice work.
Now, this has not happened yet, but I feel it's important to talk about because I am now increasing the distance. If you have increased the distance between yourself and your dog whenever you call them, and you run into a snag, meaning you call your dog's name and their recall cue and they're just not listening, that would be the chance to use your prompts. I'm going to do a brief prompt right here.
Good job. Good job. Good job.
I'm not sure if you heard me pat my leg 3 times, but that extra noise, the patting a leg, any kissing noises, whistles, these can all be your prompts. And whenever I increase the distance between myself and my dog, I have a habit of doing it naturally. That way I give my dog the best chance to listen to me and come to me when I call him. It's pretty habitual for me at this point. I don't even notice myself doing it until I look at videos like this. So yes, go ahead and use your prompts whenever you start increasing the distance, but especially if you feel like your dog is being slow to listen.
Nice. Good job. Good job.
And as you can see, Suri is really in it today. because she understands the game, and I'm sure your dogs will understand the game too. So now what I'm going to do is something new. I am hiding behind my couch, and she cannot see me. I am playing hide and seek. This is an excellent way to practice your recall cue indoors. If you have gotten really good at the distance and you find yourself needing to create more distance to make it more challenging, go ahead. You don't have to use just one room, y'all. Y'all can leave the room. You can go to a different spot of the house. You can use your entire house, and you can play hide and seek with that. Go be creative. Have fun with it, and use your whole house. Have multiple people help you out with it too. As you can see, I'm having lots of fun with this one right now. And she came immediately, so that was really good. All right, y'all. All right, y'all, before we move on, I'm going to show you what to do if your dog is simply not listening to your cue nor your prompts. So in the next rep, I'm going to place obvious distractions on the couch. And what you're going to see is me actually decrease the distance in order to help her succeed.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
So right there you see that I said her name, I did prompts, but it did not work. So I decreased the distance away from her. I got closer to her to raise the probability of her listening to me. This is what you do if your dog is simply not listening. Now, she is eating treats. Of course, she's going to keep doing that. It's hard. Keep watching. There we go. She's eating treats. I don't really expect her to leave the treats alone to come to me, but I'm just using that as an example. There's going to be a day where your dog is into a bush or into something they found outside, and you're going to have to decrease the distance of your recall in order for it to work, just like I'm doing right here. So all I'm doing is making myself more relevant by getting closer to the dog, and that's it. And I'm doing my prompts. I'm sounding really, really excited, really goofy, because I know that works for my dog. She likes when I sound goofy, and I recommend you do whatever you can, whatever your dog likes, and use that while getting closer. This is what you do if your dog is simply not responding to your recall cue. If this happens often, I always recommend going back to step one and practicing in an easier environment to make sure that your cue is working the way that you need it to. All right, y'all, if you've practiced this extensively and you feel like your dog needs a more challenging environment, especially if you use your entire house already, stay tuned because I'm going to show you something really exciting. All right, y'all, so I'm showing y'all a very advanced recall, and I'm only doing this because I really wanted to show y'all that what you're doing inside can certainly work outside. That being said, whenever you want to take your recall training outside, I highly recommend only doing this in an enclosed area, a fully fenced in area like a backyard. If it's not fully fenced in, get a long line. My dogs both have 15-foot long lines on right now, and I recommend attaching that to yourself. You can also order longer long lines. I have 30-foot long lines and 50-foot long lines just for recall practice. That being said, I am doing the exact same thing I do inside. I call their name and then their recall cue, then I wait for them to come to me. That is how I do recall outside. With the longer distance, I really make sure to use prompts if needed. But most of the time, these dogs do not need prompts because I practice their recall cue so much over the years. Yes, I said years. When they come to me, they get that jackpot treat. If they were not coming to me, I would have shortened that distance. I would have got closer to them. Since I'm outside in a very distracting, highly noisy area, I'm using high value treats. I'm using cheese. I even have some bacon in my treat pouch. That being said, what is reinforcing, what is high value depends on the dog, and you know your dog. So you need to figure out what is high value and what is very reinforcing for your dog before taking it outside. And again, before taking it outside, pick somewhere smart. Highly recommend practicing in your backyard before ever taking it out in public like I have. You really want to make sure you proof it in the best areas possible before taking it to harder areas. So if you got a backyard, use it. If you don't have a backyard, use long lines, maybe use a driveway. I've used my driveway for recall often. That being said, y'all, this is the recall how-to video. I'm so glad y'all made it through this long video. I'm so proud of y'all. Keep it going.